Let me start the recordings. I hope my screen is visible to all of you. Anyone can say? Is it visible?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
So last class, what I discussed, I will just go through within 5 minutes. I think we have few new students who have joined this class from today, or they should join the class from today. Uh, uh, First, I think one of your seniors had joined the class. His name is some. So you please add it at the Saurabh. है ना? We have Saurabh with us. I think he might be your senior. Saurabh Patil. है ना? You please add Saurabh to the WhatsApp group also. Okay, so that he can get updates from the WhatsApp group also. So in the last class, what we discussed after the introductory PPT, we went through this chapter and we came to know that yes, there are certain complicated structures which solution cannot be found out or which cannot be found out by the analytical methods, integration, differentiation, etc. So in such cases, we need to approximate those structures with the help of small elements and then we find out the numerical solutions to each of the subdomains or you may say subsections of the complex structure. Then we combine them to find the solution that we discussed in the last class. I think I had briefed something about the history also, that though uh, the term finite element method was coined very late, but similar concept was available or that are used by mathematicians since ages. And one example of that was this approximation of the circumference of a circle with the help of an inscribed or circumscribed circle that we discussed in the last class. We also went through two examples in the last class where you found that a milling machine, obviously, it has a number of parts as mentioned here, and different parts of the milling machine undergo different level of stress when it is operated. Similarly, as we know that this finite element method was developed mainly when scientists worked upon the modeling of the aeroplanes. So this is an example also how an aeroplane structure can be approximated with the help of FEM methods. We have completed up to that this much. Now the next thing is, as I told, though the history or you may say the use of similar things that we are studying in FEM is done by mathematicians since ages. But yes, we have to know when formally the method was developed. So basically the basic concepts of the FEM, which we are calling today nowadays FEM, they were basically found in the papers of Turner, Kloch, Martin, and Toff. Okay, so these are a group of scientists who tried to develop the idea of finite element methods, but these were the basic ideas. Okay, there are another group, Argyris and Kelsey. So there are two groups of people who try to contribute through their papers in the development of FEM, but the name of finite element method was finally coined by Kloch. Okay, so the references are given here 1.2, 1.3, 1.4, so that if anyone is interested, what was exactly the basic things that they contributed through their papers, and that latter got the name FEM. Okay, and now we are studying it. So they have given the references so that we can go through them and study if we wish to get more detail about that. If I talk of the first group, Turner, Kloch, Martin, and Toff. So in their papers, what they tried to do, they took the examples of pin joint bar, triangular plate, in plane loads, okay, for the application of aircraft structure, okay. And this was the first, you may say, approach or effort which led to the development of finite element method. And in the development, the contribution of, you may say, the digital computers, this was very crucial. Because of the digital computers, the calculations of the FEM would be done properly, and we could finally get practical solutions. Because see, studying something theoretically it's good, but practically implementing it needs some, you may say, technology, some sort of computing power. Okay. So as the digital computers also got revolved with time, so this helped in the development of FEM basically. Okay. So when the high-speed digital computers were developed, accordingly, the processing power are increased and the FEM techniques also further improved. Means the first methods or the initial methods proposed by Kloch, maybe they have been improved with time. Why? Because the thing was that the computational power increased earlier, which was taking much time or which was maybe difficult to compute. Nowadays, those could be computed easily. Okay, so this was one of the key factors that helped in the development of the techniques related to FEM with progress of time. And there is a book. There is a book by this author Przemysław, है ना? Przemysław. Okay. So in this book, what it provides, how FEM method has been applied for the solution of stress analysis that they have provided. Another group, they have again provided the broad interpretation of the method and its application to any general problem. So see, initially when Kloch given the name and they tried to develop it for the development of finite element methods so that we can use it in aircraft structure. But later, scientists like this group, they tried to interpret the method and tried to apply it in any general problem. Okay. So because of that, then many other scientists also came. Okay. Then with the broad interpretation, people found that the equations can also be derived. That means the equations that was proposed by FEM, they can also be derived using weighted residual methods like Galeckin method and least square approach. So basically, when this got popular, when it could be applied to many problems, what scientists found that the FEM equations can be generated or can be derived using the other methods. And because of this, since this method could be applied to many fields, secondly, these equations, the equations of the FEM method, they could be generated or they could be, you may say, produced with the help of other methods. So this basically gained the interest of the mathematicians also, and they tried to solve the linear as well as non-linear differential equations with the help of finite element methods. And many research papers, conference, books have been published in this method. Okay, and the history, a brief history of the beginning of the FEM method has been presented by Gupta and Meek in their book. Okay, so there are many books that have been mentioned the application of, you may say, the mathematical formulation, what is the mechanical design, structural, fluid flow, heat transfer, electromagnetic and manufacturing applications, and computer programming aspects that are given at the end of the chapter. So many books have been listed here. Those who are interested to the application of specific field, they can be found from these references from 1.10 to 1.32. So applications for different chapters can be found with the help of these references. So because of this, with all the types of progress, now it is used as a convenient and well-established method for engineers as well as applied scientists. Applied scientists means those who don't work on any development of new techniques. Basically, they just apply the available techniques into new fields. Okay, so these are the applied scientists. So applied scientists and engineer nowadays use FEM very conveniently. Okay, and this is actually a proof. The thing that we saw here, this one. Okay, what we saw that with the help of polygon which is inscribed inside the circle, we can find out the circumference, and with the help of polygon that is circumscribed over a circle, with the help of that also we can get the polygon. Sorry, we can get the circumference of the circle. So this is a proof of that. How we can get it is a proof of that. Let me go through it also. So this is example 1.1. What it is saying, the circumference of a circle is approximated by the perimeters of the inscribed and circumscribed n-sided. Remember n-sided. Why? Because we'll not fix the n. We'll try to increase gradually the number of the sides of the polygon so that we can give a close approximate of the circumference. Okay. So it can be obtained from the perimeters. We have to prove it. Prove the following, that when n tends to infinity, when we have a polygon of infinite number of sides, then S basically is the perimeter, okay, through the, or here you can see where SL and SU denote the perimeters of the inscribed and circumscribed polygons. Yes, so SL basically refers to the perimeter of the inscribed polygon, and when n is infinite, we'll get the exact circumference of the circle. Similarly, when n is infinite and we have then circumscribed polygon, that will also converge to the circle circumference. So we have to prove it. In this case, as I mentioned, there are certain formula. We have to accept that these formulas are correct. We should not go more into it, as I mentioned in the last class also. So for example, we know that our circle has radius. So basically this is the proof. Okay, how it is possible? Limit n tends to infinity, SL tends to equal to S. We shall prove it. So suppose we have a circle and the radius is R. Each side of the inscribed and circumference polygon can be expressed as R is equal to 2R sine pi by n. S is equal to 2R tan pi by n. Now these two formulae, these are taken from, you may say, your trigonometry. Okay, so this is basically your R, capital R. This is also capital R, and this is regarded as the small r. Okay, and if I say this is theta, so this is theta by 2. So from the formulas of the polygon, or you may say the Pythagoras theorem, okay, we can derive the relation. What is the relationship between the small r and the capital R? Okay, so basically if you see, this is a triangle and this R by 2 is the base of a, what you can say, your perpendicular. This is perpendicular, so this is 90 degree. Okay, so from here we can derive, we know that R by 2 is the base, or basically R is the total base. Okay, if I say R by 2, then R by 2 can be obtained, small r by 2 is base, and using this formula sine formula, we can get the value of R. Similarly, S, if I say S is basically this much, one side of the circumscribed polygon. This was inscribed polygon, this was circumscribed polygon. We want S. Okay, in that case, with the help of again this R, we can represent it. And since we have n number of sides of the polygon, if one side is either R or S, then the total perimeter will be n into R. Okay, like it is a, for example, it is a hexagon. So one side is small r, then the total perimeter will be 6 into small r. If one side is small s, if it is a hexagon, it will be 6 into s. If it is a circumscribed polygon and one side is s, then it will be 6 into s. Similarly, since we are assuming that we have n number of sides, so it will be this formula. Now, just look at the way it is changed. Okay, 2 pi r, let me highlight it. Okay, so if you see sine pi by n, this is here also. Okay, it is available here. 2 pi 2 n r. Basically, what we did, we multiplied pi and divided pi, and you know n is equal to, if we have n is equal to, we can write it as 1 by n. Okay, so I can write it 1 by n. So in this way, this n has been taken here. We have multiplied pi here. Okay, it is a pi. If I divide pi, then there is no issue here. Okay, so if I multiply pi and divide pi, okay, then this formula can be derived. Anyone any question how this was obtained from here? Any question? Basically, we multiplied and divided pi, and this n was taken 1 upon n, and we got this formula. If there is no question from your side, let me ask you, do you remember anything? Sin x by x, there is a formula for it. Does anyone remember? Sin x by x or sin 0 by 0, there is a formula for it, if you remember, trigonometry. Can anyone say what is the value of that? Okay, if you don't remember, it's okay. Just remember sin x by x or tan x by x. If you go to the limits, since we are using limit here, okay, when n tends to infinity, pi by n tends to 0. Basically, this becomes pi by n becomes 0. Sin 0 by 0. If you remember limit n tends to infinity, sin n by n or sin 0 by 0, it is equal to 1. This is a formula from limit. Okay, so this SL now becomes to 2 pi r into 1. SU also becomes to 2 pi r into 1. So basically, in both the cases, we get SL is equal to also 2 pi r and SU also is equal to 2 pi r. So this was just basically a proof using analytical method. Here we have not used any FEM, but this was just an example. This was just an example how we can prove the things. Okay. Now there are certain equations. I don't know how you remember it, but anyway, we have to go through them so that in future, when we come across during the subject, you can understand them better. So as we discussed previously also, although maximum application of FEM has been from the structural mechanics, but there are other applications like heat conduction, fluid dynamics, then seepage flow, electric and magnetic fields. Okay, so there are many applications of, you may say, the FEM. Okay, and in mathematics, what we use it for the solution of the complicated boundary value problem and other problems also, but specifically for the complicated boundary value problems we use FEM in mathematics. Okay, and also It can be used for the numerical solution of the ordinary and partial differential equations. Sorry for the bad lines. Okay, my lines are not straight. Next time I am trying to using the digital slate. I have ordered one digital slate. So what it is saying, the general applicability of the finite element method can be seen by observing the strong similarities that exist between various types of engineering problems. For example, let us consider the following phenomena. Basically, in the heading or in the under the section general applicability of the method, what we are trying to figure out here, we shall try to understand and we'll find that many types of problems have similar formulae or similar type of structure basically. Okay. In most of the cases, we'll find differential equations, and these differential equations, since they have differential equations, so if we say that our finite element methods can provide solution to differential equations, then obviously they are applicable to all these different applications. So this section is basically dedicated to show how different types of problems have similar types of equations, and then we have methods how we can apply FEM to those techniques. So basically this is a recap. I'll not go into detail. This is just for your general idea. I hope you have gone through heat transfer problems earlier. Okay. And suppose we have a heated one dimensional body. Basically heat is flowing in one direction. For example, there is a like this. So heat is flowing from here to here, for example. Okay. So it is, suppose this is your body, maybe little bit thick. Next time I will try to draw good figures, but anyway, try to assume that this is basically a rod. Okay. This is basically a rod and heat is flowing from one side to the other side. So the rate at which heat enters, this is the formula for that. Where K is the thermal conductivity, A is the cross-sectional area, okay, and delta T by delta X basically is the rate of change of temperature with respect to the axial direction. So the direction with which it is moving, with respect to that, this is the rate of change of temperature with distance, okay, and if it is entering at one end, obviously it will leave out at the other end, right? So it is entering at one end, it is moving out at the other end. So the rate at which it leaves the other end, the formula is this. And this is basically derived from Taylor series expansion. There are various series, Taylor series, you might have heard Fourier series, many series are there. Basically, these are to simplify a complex formulae. When there is a complex power term, we can solve them with the help of Taylor series. And there are two terms. It can be expanded further also, but with the help of only the first two terms of the Taylor series, it is provided that if you have come across this earlier, I expect so. And I had told you in the last class also that these are some things that we have to assume. Yes, these are the formulae. We should not spend time much in deriving them. And if we talk of the heat balance, for example, suppose this was the entire object, and we have taken a small cross section. This small cross section is elaborated here. This small cross section is dx, at which if we want to know the energy balance, then what will happen? The heat inflow at time, small time, delta T or dt, and the heat generated inside. Sometimes it may happen the heat will be generated. Although heat is coming from outside, it may happen that heat is generating inside also. So the combination of the incoming heat as well as in-house or the heat that is generated inside the object, combination of both the things will be heat outflow and what is the temperature or what is the that is taking place inside that time. So this is the formula for that. Okay, this is, and it has previous courses that you have studied earlier. So sorry, I think the voice broke for some time. So basically here, as we know, the Q is the heat generation, okay, per unit volume. This is basically Q dot. If you see here, this is Q dot, and this is heat generation. Okay, earlier we had Q. This is Q dot, heat generation rate. Okay, there is a dot over there. Basically, that is derivative of that. Okay, C is the specific heat. Rho is the density. Delta T by delta capital T by delta T into dt is basically the change in temperature. Okay, in that element in a time dt, and if we combine all the thing, then we get a formula like this. Now, if I talk of specific cases, if we say there is basically no heat is generated. For example, we have a material where there is no heat generation inside the body. Whatever is coming, that will go out. There is no internal heat generation. If that is true, then this delta Q becomes 0 and the formula becomes again simpler. If we say there is steady state, what is the meaning of steady state? Anyone can say? Any idea? What is the steady state? Steady state, basically your temperature is not changing, right? Okay, your variable of interest remains constant. So basically here the T, delta T is change in temperature, that is actually not happening. Hence, in case of steady state, the left side will remain the same. What is the internal heat generation? What is the incoming heat flow? These will remain, but there will be no change in the temperature. Okay, so in case of the steady state. Next, if the heat source is 0, heat source is 0 means this is the heat source. Okay, incoming heat. So if the heat source is 0, then you can say that this much is 0. Okay, this is called Laplace equation. So I think you all have gone through this equation, Poisson equation. This is called Poisson equation. This is called Fourier equation. This is called Laplace equation. And if the thermal conductivity and the area of cross section are constant, then this becomes basically this much. Okay. So this is the simplified form. After making a number of assumptions, you come across this, you may say, not differential equation. Basically, you can say these are the partial differential equations, right? So these differential equations, this is basically when we assume that our cross section is constant, it's not changing. Thermal conductivity is also constant. If we assume all these things, then we'll get this formula. This was for what? Heat flow. Okay. You don't need to worry about the derivations. Basically, it is saying that for the one-dimensional heat transfer, you get formula like this. And now you need to solve it. The purpose is only this much. Next, let's go to the fluid flow. Now we go to the fluid dynamics. In case of fluid dynamics also, you know that the net mass transfer flow at every cross section, rho AU, the multiplication rho AU is constant, where rho is the density, A is the cross sectional area, and U is the flow velocity. So the multiplication is constant. Okay. And we can see that if the net mass flow is constant, then its derivative will be obviously 0. If something is constant, you know that its derivative is 0, right? So this is 0. And if the fluid is invexed, there exists a potential function such that U is equal to dy by dt. What is this? Let me show you in the figure. Let's go here. See this one. U. Okay. So we have this cross-sectional area which is changing basically, right? So it is basically AX. It is not a constant one. Here the cross-sectional area is A. This is constant. But in case of the fluid flow, you assume that U is the input flow that is coming. Okay. Here the cross-sectional area was X, and but it is changing. it is changing and it is written as AX. At different points, its value is different. Now, if we go here, U can be given with the help of this. Okay. Now, if I change U to this case, already d by dx rho a was there. If you know that, yes, this is a potential function, okay, of distance, and I can write U as this much, then my formula becomes this. Again, if you see d by dx phi, that is basically rho a, what it will happen? Rho a d square phi by dx square equal to 0. Again, a second order differential equation. Next, let's go for the solid bar under axial load. Okay, so the force will be area into stress. We know A is area and stress is equal to E into strength. Okay, E is Young's modulus. I think you all know about it. Okay, so the reaction force that will be generated inside the bar after you are applying a force. Okay, that will be same as the applied force as per the law of conservation of energy. Okay, and if the applied load is constant, then you can write, since the load is constant or the applied force is constant, its derivative will be equal to 0. Again, if you see both the equations, 1.7, where is 1.7? This one, 1.7. Then 1.12, this is 1.12. This is 1.14. If you see that all of them have equations basically. Some are partial differential equations, some are differential equations. Okay, and we'll see how we can solve these things. Basically, although the application area is different, this is your structural problem, this is fluid flow, this is heat transfer. Although the applications are different, or basically the area of study is different, but every time we are getting second order differential equations or partial differential equations. So what we have to do now, from all these three applications or all these three formulae, we can come into conclusion that yes, why FEM is applicable to many fields. This is because the dimensionality, or sorry, you may say the dynamics of many different fields can be described with the help of either differential or partial differential equations. And since our method FEM is able to handle the partial differential equations or only differential equations, hence FEM is applicable to many fields. It is not like that it is because of the method. No, it is because of the application area. Since application area are similar, hence our method FEM is applicable to many fields. So any question? I'll not move further here because after that we have the steps of FEM, and once we start the steps of FEM, I need few confirmations from your side that you are aware of this what you call your matrix. Okay, so I have arranged one more. Just a minute. Sorry, just a minute. I have arranged one more note for you. Okay, so this is also I have taken from an university, and that university name is this one, University of Cincinnati. Okay, I have taken this note from there, so credit goes to them. It's not for me because I went through many books, many notes. I have handwritten notes also. I collected those, but I found that this I was appreciated by me because I found that before they started the concepts, they gave you some review of the matrix algebra. This is essential basically, because if you don't remember or don't recall the concepts of matrix algebra, it will be difficult for you, because we'll talk about column vectors, then matrices, then inverse of that, okay, determinant of that. So these things are used here. So I'll just go through a small recap of all the things that you need here. So if we know that this is a linear system of equations, Can anyone say me what is the meaning of linear system of equations? Here you have n number of equations. Basically, this is a11 x1 plus a12 x2 a dot 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 a1 and xn equal to b1. Why this set of equations are called as linear equations? Can anyone tell why it is called linear? And when it would have been called non-linear? Can anyone say? Is my voice coming? My voice is clear, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. I thought that my voice is not there. Anyway, so this is called basically linear system of equations because there are certain criteria that it has to fulfill if it is to be called as linear system of equations. See, anywhere you cannot find power greater than 1. So first criteria, your variable should have unity power. You have n number of variables x1, x2, xn, but you cannot find power of 2 or higher in any of the cases. Okay, this is one of the criterias. So to know that yes, my system of equation is linear system of equation. Basically linear, you can also know it from other side. You know that y is equal to ax plus b. It is in the same form. If I say the entire equal to y1, then it will be basically y1 is equal to many x terms, then a constant term. Okay, where x1, x2, xn are basically the unknown. Okay. In matrix form, what we say it ax equal to b. So next time when I write ax equal to b, you should assume this thing that I am talking about this linear system of equations where a is basically all the coefficients. Okay, all the coefficients of the independent variable. Here x is the independent variable. Okay, x1, x2, xn is the independent variables or unknowns. So small x represents basically the column vector of all the independent variables, and b represents small b, bold small b represents the all the constant terms. So basically a is called a square matrix, b and x are called the column vectors of dimension n. Okay, here the square matrix has dimension n cross n. I hope you all remember this. When we have a vector like this, we call this row vector. Vector like this, we call it column vector. Okay, and you are able to add and subtract two vectors when they have same size. Please keep in mind, sometimes you may get questions where there are two vectors or basically two matrices uh, who don't have same size, basically same dimension. In that case, we cannot add or subtract them. We can add or subtract them only when they are of the same size. Okay. If I multiply something, a constant, lambda is a constant. If I multiply a constant with a matrix A, basically the coefficient matrix, then every element, if small a ij represents the every, you may say, uh, element, then just a minute. Okay, so if I multiply a constant with a matrix, means that I have to multiply that constant with each and every element of that matrix. Its meaning is that scalar multiplication. Now matrix multiplication. When can we multiply two matrices? Okay. We can multiply two matrices when this is the number of rows, this is the number of columns. When the number of columns of the first matrix and the number of rows of the second matrix are same, then and only you can multiply. So if I have A of size L cross M and B of size M cross N, then we can calculate the product AB, and C is equal to AB, where C ij equal to epsilon k equal to 1 to M. So this is basically the multiplication of individual terms. Cij means that we have to individually multiply both elements from matrix A and matrix B. Okay, but it is generally not commutative. Commutative means multiplication of A with B is not necessarily equal as multiplication of B with A. But yes, matrix multiplication is associative. Okay. If we have three matrices, obviously we can multiply the first two in the first place, and then you can multiply with the third one, or you can first multiply B and C and then multiply with A. You will find that this is associative. Okay. So these are certain rules. Transpose of a matrix. I hope you know transpose, that if A is a matrix of matrix elements Aij, then if I transpose it, then it will become Aji. Okay, I'll not go into examples. I just wanted to give a brief idea to all of you. Okay, and it is an important thing you have to keep in mind that if I want to find out the transpose of A into B, it is not A transpose into B transpose, it is B transpose into A transpose. Okay, so you have to be careful regarding this. And symmetric matrix, I will say a matrix is to be symmetric if its transpose is same as the same matrix. Okay, if Aij equal to Aji, then we will call it as symmetric matrix. Then we call unit matrix. What is unit matrix? Unit matrix is the matrix where the diagonal, the main diagonal, there are two diagonals basically. This is the one diagonal, this is one diagonal, but this is called a main diagonal. When the main diagonal elements are 1 and rest other elements are 0. Okay, rest all other elements are 0. This is called a unit matrix. And if you multiply a unit matrix with any other matrix, you will get the same matrix. There will be no change in the value. Okay. Then how to calculate the determinant? So for a 2 cross 2 element, you know, I hope this is multiplication of this minus multiplication of this. Okay. First we will multiply AD, then we will subtract that from BC. Okay. For 3 cross 3 matrix, you know that first we will multiply A11. Okay. With this much, with this matrix. When we are calculating, then plus A12, then we will cross this one. Okay. I hope you remember this. Then we'll calculate this. So I am not going into detail. I hope you all remember it from your mathematics course. Okay. Then when a matrix is said to be singular, when your determinant is 0, we say it singular matrix, but we probably don't prefer to use singular matrix because a singular matrix provides you may say non-unique solutions. Basically, there will be infinite number of solutions and it's of no use. We try to find it. We try to find out finite solutions. So basically, we try to get non-singular matrix. Okay. There it is mentioned is for a square and non-singular matrix. Non-singular matrix means whose determinant is not 0. It is mentioned here. Okay. So if you have a non-singular matrix, you can find the inverse. Okay. And how to calculate it? Basically, I hope if you remember A into A inverse or A inverse into A is equal to identity matrix. And if I say cofactor matrix, basically cofactor matrix, if I say equal to minus 1 to the power I plus j mij, this is basically the mij is the determinant of the smaller matrix obtained by eliminating the ith and jth column of A. Okay, so basically it is calculating of that inverse. I hope you all know, so I will not go into this because we have examples below. You'll find it there. Next we have as we had transpose formula. Transpose of AB, here we had transpose. Transpose of AB equal to B transpose A transpose. Similarly, in case of inverse formula, AB inverse is equal to B inverse into A inverse. Okay, similar to that. So there are certain things. This is A inverse formula. Suppose this is a 2 cross 2 matrix. We want to find its inverse. So this is its inverse. I hope you can understand it. I'm not going deep into. And we know that A inverse into A equal to identity matrix. This is a proof of that. Again, for a 3 cross 3 matrix, this is the formula to find out the you may say inverse. and again by multiplying the inverse with the original, we get again identity matrix. And remember, when there is determinant of A equal to 0, basically when A is singular, you cannot calculate A inverse. A inverse cannot be calculated. Okay. And the solution of the linear system of equations can be expressed as x equal to A inverse B. From where we got it? Here, from the initial. So x is equal to basically implies, let use just a minute, huh? Just a minute. Let me use. So I hope, sorry. Okay. So here you can write implies x equal to A inverse B. Okay. The same thing is written here. Okay. X equal to A inverse B. So this main task in solving linear system of equations is to find the inverse of the coefficient matrix. Okay. So basically there will be certain questions in future in our FEM where you will see this always. Your column vectors, row vector. This is okay. Column vectors, row vectors, inverse matrix. So you'll find many things of such situations, and I expect that you all should be aware of this. We should not spend much time in this, so I did not go into it. Okay. Now, few more things. Positive definite matrix, a definite, when we call a matrix as a positive definite matrix, we'll call it when A transpose, sorry, X transpose A into X, this is greater than 0. Okay, basically non-singular matrix are called as your positive definite matrix. Next is differentiation and integration. So in case of differentiation and integration, if this is your, sorry, if this is your equation, so this is the matrix, and if we find the derivative of that, then basically we have to do the derivative of every element. This is the each element, and we have to do the derivative of each element to get the derivative of the entire matrix. If I want to integrate, I have to integrate each and every element. This is basically the thing that the author wants to let us know. Then types of finite elements, because we are going to read finite element methods. So we need to know how many minimum points or nodes or what type of elements we can expect in FEM. Okay, so in case of one-dimensional element, or basically one-dimensional problems, we need minimum 2 nodes. These are called nodes. Okay, so when we solve, we need such nodes. Examples are spring, truss, beam, pipe. I hope you know truss. Okay, so these structures like this, okay, that are used in case of your what is that called, bridges or like that, truss. Okay, next in case of the 2D elements, examples of 2D elements are, you want to find the solution for a plate, membrane, shell, so you need minimum 4 points. Okay, so it's needs to be understood that in case of your problems related to plane, you need minimum 4 points, and in case of one dimension, you need minimum 2 points. In case of 3D elements, we need many points basically. Okay, so this is an example. You need many points, and these things come in case of temperature, displacement, stress, flow, velocity, etc. Okay, so this is all about these are the basic things. Next we will go to spring, but it will be incomplete today, so I don't want to start it, and I will give it in the material section so that you can go through it. Basically, matrix multiplication, some rules of it, determinants, how to calculate determinant, how to calculate the matrix inversion. This I wanted you all to know, basically remind what you had studied in mathematics. Okay, and the other topic that we discussed today was basically this one. Okay, so what are the various formulae that will come across during our study. These are basically the formulae that will come across. Okay, so I hope you all know about them earlier. I don't want to spend time in deriving this one. Okay, this one, then this one. So these are basically the most important things for us. Okay, let me change the color. Okay, so basically this formula we'll use in FEM. This formula will be also used. This formula will be used, but we will not go into the derivation of this because we expect that you all should know, as I had mentioned, that we'll go directly into the problems because our approach is to solve the problems, not to define the problems. Okay, so these are the three questions, these three formulae. What I expect from you here today, you don't need to remember the derivation. Okay, you don't need to remember the derivation, but at least you remember these things. You need to remember this one, sorry, you need to remember this one and the special cases. You may be asked in CA1, what is the Fourier equation, what is the Poisson equation, what is the Laplace equation. Okay, and in case of same thermal conductivity and cross-sectional area or constant thermal conductivity and cross-sectional area, what is the formula. Okay, then you might be asked about the mass flow equation under various assumptions. You might be asked about this formula also, so please go through, you just keep a note of this formula. Okay, and regarding the history, this proof I don't need to ask. Okay, so you don't need to read this one. These are just for your understanding. And from here, I'll provide you with this highlighted portion. Okay, so basically here you need to know who coined the term finite element methods. This one thing you need to know for the exam point of view. And from here, yes, maybe small 1-2 observations you need to tell. And we had a PPT where we had given the applications, advantages, disadvantages of FEM. So I feel there is not much for you to study for the CA1. You just go through that PPT that I have already uploaded in the file section. Under the file section, you have study materials. Inside that, I have already uploaded it. I will upload this much of the book. Okay, I'll upload only this much of the book so that you can go through them. And this one also, I'll go through. I'll upload this one also so that you can recap what you have studied. So up to this, we'll have in our CA1, we'll not put anything from spring element. We have class, I think, on Wednesday again. Let me check. Wednesday, no. We have on Thursday. Okay, Thursday means 28th. So what is actually the process? Do you go through classes when you have CA? Classes are conducted or not? Can anyone give an idea?
No, sir.
No, na? So during those days, you just give the exams, na?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so let's do one thing. 28th is your exam, and I'll not disturb you at that time. Hai. So you just need to read that much I mentioned. Hai. If possible, I will give you some hints of some questions also in the group. Okay, in the WhatsApp group. I don't prefer to upload such things in MS Teams because I don't know how someone will take it in way. But anyway, while making the questions, I'll give you some hints. Okay, which things to be studied. You just go through these. These are not much. Hai. I expect you all to do get good marks, and the questions will be MCQ and MSQ basically. Not only MCQ and MSQ. Maybe 6 questions will be MCQ where only one answer is correct, and there will be 2 questions where more than one answer can also be correct, or more than one option can also be correct. So you have to choose all the right answers. So there will be 2 questions. which will carry 2 marks each. So 4 marks from there and 6 marks from single answer correct questions. Okay. And I suggest you all to go to. Yes.
It will be more theoretical, right? I mean, there are no
Yes.
numerical to solve.
No,
right?
actually, we have not started solving questions. है ना? We'll start solving
Okay.
questions from the next chapter. See, actually, this one are the questions now. We'll go through questions here. Let me show you. See, after we go up to this much formulae, then we'll solve questions. है ना? From the springs, we'll start solving questions. है ना? Then we have other questions also. For CA1, there will be nothing like solving questions. You will have just maybe formulae, some basic concepts, application, which of the following represent the application of this, which of the following represent the maybe advantages of FEM, disadvantages of FEM, questions like this only. Okay, so but yes, I have missed many classes in the past, so I request all of you to help me to cover it in the next week. So this week I will not disturb till Friday. You carry on your studies. You might have other subjects also, but next week please help me. So we'll fix classes. Let me. So do you have any other class? Today. Oh, you have class now, right? Yes, you have class. Okay, so this is all about, and we'll be in touch in the next chat. If you have any queries, you can write in the chat of the group also, WhatsApp group. Okay, you have one more class now, so you can join that class. Okay. Okay, thank you all.
Sir, so for CA1, only the PPT which you've uploaded in the file section is enough, right?
And two more things I'll upload today. These two things that I discussed, these two things I'll upload. Only that much. 3 sections,
Okay,
3
sir.
things.
Okay, sir.
Okay. Bye.
अटेंडेंस हो गई क्या?